yeah. So you guys get to hear a little bit behind the curtain for those of you watching live.
So we're gonna go into talking about. So Dan, talk to us about your 3D printing company, and I want to put a link in the YouTube description when we do the YouTube, and then kind of how you guys started. What are your views on like what you do, like bits versus full models, and then kind of how you think 3D printing is going to move forward in the future.
So starting off a couple of years ago, a buddy of mine, we just started playing as Ray as 8th released, and we just started playing Warhammer again. He is an engineer at GM, and he just got a 3D printer, started messing around with it, and I didn't know anything about it. He brought over a piece of terrain one day, which is right here, which I know you guys have seen, but see if we can get this to show. But you can see it's quite the extreme piece here if you look at the whole thing.
I like that.
Yeah, it's the big Citadel thing. So he brought that over, and I was like, what is going on? What is this? How'd you do it? Where'd you get it from? And he kind of just explained what the 3D printing was. And then I told my wife about it, and for my birthday that year, she bought me my first 3D printer. And from there, it was just a cascading effect. She didn't know what she started. So now I own 12 3D printers of both resin. I own 4 resin printers, and I own a whole bunch of FDM printers. And I run just a bunch of different stuff. But what I like to do is I'm a big fan of not doing full models. I like to do bits and pieces, especially rare bits and pieces for people. That's what I started doing mostly for myself, and then I just turned it into a business as people requested more and more of them, especially with the Eldar stuff. Kind of as an example, when the Chaos Havoc Squad came out, and they gave it the 1 cannon in the whole box, and everybody was like, "That all you're going to want is the 5 cannons. What the hell?" Replacing those 4 other, being able to replace those 4 other cannons without buying 4 more boxes is kind of the reasoning to me, like why to use the 3D printing market to fill in those gaps. I don't like to do full models of things, and typically I won't. I like to do add-on things, conversions, that kind of stuff, and I do all my own modeling. Started off in Blender, and now I do ZBrush.
And I was able to get you a picture-in-picture. You have ZBrush down in your bottom corner.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
And there was a question live from chat. What's the difference between FDM and resin?
So FDM is basically with a melted plastic. So melted plastic pieces, you do a lot of terrain pieces like that that I just showed, and those are typically a lot bigger. And what it is essentially doing is extruding a plastic into a heated nozzle that is then forcing out the plastic, and it's building the thing as it's going up. Whereas a resin printer, especially the ones that we're using for this kind of hobby, the cheaper ones and stuff like that, are just a vat of resin sitting down below, and then it has a plate that dips down into it, picks up, and what it does is it cures UV resin inside that vat and sticks it to the plate, and you're basically building it up layer by layer, doing the entire full layer. Resin is fantastic for small detail, tiny little things and everything, but it's far more expensive than an FDM printer, which will produce massive things fairly cheaply. And then the resin has a much higher quality look to it, whereas you can get really good out of plastic. Typically, plastic has the little lines and stuff you can see on the sides. So it really depends on what you want to do. If you want to make big terrain pieces and fill out an entire board, you buy a FDM plastic printer. If you want to build bits and things like that, you will go and you'll do the resin printers. So.
Nice.
So the ones with the lines, I've seen a lot of techniques on how to take the lines out of it. Now, is it getting to the point where you're gonna have you'll always have lines with the FTM, or and then how do you get rid of that when you have a finished piece of terrain if you wanted to?
So the lines are actually not that hard to get rid of. Typically, it depends on the model. the finer you go with your details on those, so like if I it's all based on millimeters, and so it's like 0.1 millimeter is a very fine. That means it's just going up when it's raising in the z-axis by 0.1 millimeters each layer, and so then you go to 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. And as you get up in the layer height, you'll get more of those lines. So like nobody will pretty much print over like 0.4 with your regular printer, because otherwise the layers don't even stick to each other. I usually print at 0.2 because you're trying to beat quickness and effectiveness with quality at the same time. 0.2 is really a very good. And then what you can do is you can actually sand it. A lot of people sand them. They'll use like fillers to fill in any gaps or anything like that with the lines. Typically for me, I have found just that spray paint you normally would use from like an auto parts store or whatever. It'll fill it in so well you won't even notice it afterwards a lot of times. The other option is you can use specific, like ABS is a type of plastic that you can it melts with acetone. So you can put into what is an acetone bath, essentially. I made a big container out of a fish bowl, and I filled it with acetone in the bottom, put a fan inside of it, and let the fan run. And all it does is the air and the acetone has it, you obviously seal that. And then the acetone will just touch the outside layer of it, and it'll melt very, very lightly all of the outside layers. So then all those lines go away, and it looks perfectly smooth after that point. The only problem with that is sometimes you lose a little bit of detail.
Okay. I would say, where would you get that acetone at? You just get it online, or do you? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So what's your process? How do you make the models? Like if I were new, what would you show me?
So there is I would say an extreme learning curve for the very beginning when you're modeling. I started off in Blender so Blender is essentially a all-purpose modeling program. It has CAD aspects, it has sculpting aspects, etc. Fusion 360 is CAD. There are a lot of great models that can be made in CAD, but you're not making anything organic. Period. Like you're never gonna make that Tyrannid piece out of Fusion 360. You could probably do it, but it's not gonna look as good as a sculpted model would, which is what ZBrush is that you're seeing on the screen there. And so I started off with Blender. Blender is a free program, and there are some great tutorials out there for it. But the learning curve is harsh, and it's gonna take a lot of time for you to get to the point where you're actually making models through Blender. So there are other programs like CAD that are a little bit more user-friendly, and you're able to make stuff a little bit faster, but they're going to have a lot more limitations on what you can do. Eventually, so what I do now is I build everything in Blender, which is just in blocks. So if I'm building this weapon that you see on the screen there, I'm going to build out everything without any detail, just in blocks and circles and squares and your regular objects like that. And then once I've built it there, I export it into ZBrush, and ZBrush is a fairly expensive program, but you can get monthly subscriptions and so forth, which is what I have. And with ZBrush, you can then sculpt as if it was clay. So, for instance, if we're looking at this, I have this on what is essentially an iPad for sculpting. So if I have this here, what I can do is I can mess with all the different things within this. So if I wanted to take this piece down here on the bottom, I can take that and then just focus that out with. So if I take this and let's say I just want to extend that one piece, I can then take that and move it just like that.
Oh yeah, bigger is always better.
Yeah, nice big shaft for you there. So there's a lot of, you can see how easy that is to do, and then the sculpting aspect. So that they're like modifying your model. The sculpting aspect is a little bit different, but for instance, if I wanted to sculpt on this model here, I can start just clicking in, or I have a nice pen for my pad here so I can actually draw on it, and I am an art kid, and so if I wanted to mess with this and build this up, I could build it up, and if I wanted to put like scars in it, for instance, I can start putting like some scratches and things, and the harder I push with the pen, the deeper it goes. The softer I am with it, the softer it is. So it's really useful for those type things, and that's just stuff that like CAD can't do. You're never going to be able to do that effectively. You might be able to make it something similar, look that way, but you're never going to do it that quick and easy in a CAD type program. So it's super neat for all those types of things. And so what I do is I build like that, and then after I get done building it, I'll do a lot of test printing and things like that before I'll finally have a finished product that I'm happy with. Yeah. So I do a lot of.
What are you working on there?
That's the Tau Sion or Ion Blaster cyclic Ion Blaster. Guy on Reddit actually contacted me and was like, "Hey, can you make this?" And then I was like, "Yeah, I can probably make it." So I designed it and then 3D printed a whole bunch for them and stuff like that because they have it's very popular within Tau, I guess. I don't play Tau, so I don't really know much about it. But the only way they could get it is like shapeways and stuff. Is in there like $3 to $4 a piece for every single gun, whereas I can produce them for about $1.50 a piece. So just cut costs for them and stuff. And then I designed this from scratch essentially. So if we're looking at this, I build everything myself, even if it's something that might exist on Thingiverse and stuff like that. I try and build it myself so that I know I built it from the ground up, and I can always change things. So that's a big thing that I like to do. What I did for you, Nick, with the Knight, was I was able to build it and then build out. If I start and like you want to change something, if you want to change a symbol on it or something like that, if I built it from scratch, I can go in and go, oh yeah, no problem. I can just jump in and change that real fast. Whereas if I use somebody else's model or a base of somebody else's model, it's much more difficult.
While you're talking about that, let me grab that Knight real quick.
And then, while Nick's running away, a question came in. If someone's interested in getting into 3D printing, what's a good base early level 3D printer? What can someone get?
Yeah, so it depends on what you want to do. As far as if you want to be able to do bits and things, you're gonna want any cubic photons are fantastic printers. Elegoo Mars's are also really good, and the price China's gotten in a price war with each other on it, and so all these companies that produce that, they're all clones of one original printer, and then China just cloned the crap out of them. And so they went from around $500 when I first started buying the resin printers to they're now down to under $200, which is really ridiculously cheap for how effective and how nice of a print they make. I have a very expensive printer, which is what I usually use for all of my big commercial stuff. But if I'm, just messing around with my dinky printers or whatever, then those are, if I'm doing tests and prototyping, I always do it on the cheap printer because the resin for that's a lot cheaper. And so you can get into the big thing that's going to always be a big cost is the resin. The printers, though, even replacing every single part in the printer is really not that expensive to do. The screens are kind of just disposable. They will die on you. And so you might as well just buy a couple extra of those and stuff when you first start. But otherwise, you're looking at about, $200 to $300 investment for a resin printer. And then an FDM printer, I always, there's some really good ones out there. A lot of the stuff, I have my original big printer was the TiVo Tornado. Again, Chinese one. And that thing still runs like a champ all day, every day. So I do notice more breakdowns between that one and, say, the Prusa. That is a much more expensive printer and a higher quality, built in the U.S., all that stuff. But print quality-wise, they're almost identical. I don't see a huge difference between the print quality on either one. It's just more breakdowns and more, broken parts to replace and things like that with the cheaper ones. So I just got a Sobel, and that is actually a really good starter printer, I think. That's what I've been suggesting to people. Comes with a lot of little add-ons that all the other printers don't. Just like, filament runout sensors and things like that just make a big difference for a new person just getting into it. And they're right out of the box. All of these are kits right out of the box you can buy, and it's like 4 screws it's together, and you're off to the races printing.
So I stepped away. So this is what I originally got from Dan. He printed off a few of these. I wanted the tanks from the Lord of Skulls, the blood tanks that are on the back, but I wanted to put them on my knight so it looks like they're connected to the guns. So the finished product, so here's the knight, and the finished product, they painted up just like a normal bit would. It glues on nice. I will say it's a little different, like trying to use a knife and using, like, I use pin vices and stuff like that when I do conversions. It's a little different doing that. And then the glues you have to be mindful of, like, because like with super glue, it seemed like I had to use a little bit more to get it to stick. But I think maybe if I sanded it first, it would have been fine. Like if I sanded the bottom of that, because the lid came separate. And then this back piece here that connects in here, if I would have sanded that a little bit, I think it would have worked fine. He made that, and then I also, I've been putting Anagron's shoulder pads on like everything in my army now. So these are those shoulder pads. I didn't buy the Forge World model just for the shoulder pads, and they wouldn't have been this size. So I'm glad to have. That's why I like to use the 3D printed stuff, like these. So I'm really happy with that model. Those things have turned out really tough. Of all the things that are broken on that model, just from like it falling over or something, those aren't it.
Yeah.
So what is the name of your company, by the way?
Archon 3D Smiths.
How do we find you?
Archon3dsmiths.com.
Okay.
ARCHON 3D Smiths.com. So, but yeah, like I was saying before, I don't even know that I have done an entire model of anything. I typically just do bits, pieces, conversions, additions to things, etc. That's just a personal preference. I agree with what we've talked about previously, which is if you completely replace everything in armies with completely 3D printed things, you're eliminating. Games Workshop's got to make money too, right? I know they price gouge the bejesus out of us, but if you want to keep playing the game, you got to invest, something into it. Now, I don't agree with their theory of give you one piece that you actually need in a box that's $45 for 5 models. That just pisses me off every single time. But
well, remember back in the day, they used to have that giant, thick, I love that guide. That was the bits guide. You could just buy whatever bits you wanted, and they'd send you a whole bunch. So do you think that Games Workshop inadvertently created this market?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. They absolutely created the market. And what I don't understand on Games Workshop's side is why they're not jumping on the bandwagon. They could be, because everything that they're doing is in STL form anyway. Their sculptors aren't sculpting by hand anymore. They're all doing it in ZBrush. They're all doing it in these programs. Raging Heroes is doing the same thing. They're 3D printing a prototype, they're turning it into a mold, and then they're mass producing it as a plastic piece. And that's the way, that's the smartest way to do it. If you have that capability already, though, and you already know that you can hire people that can create these models that way, they could be selling STLs to people and saying, hey, come buy the STL from us, and you can print your models. Would you buy, you need this Havoc Warrior for your Chaos Army, and he's $20 for the STL, or you can buy an entire box of them for $40. So you can print as many as you want with the $20 version, which costs them, the cost is so ridiculously lower because all you're providing is a digital format. It's how all these companies are doing it right now and making tons of money, like Artisan Guild and these other places. They're just producing STLs and sending them out. They have no paper costs. All they're paying for a website and the people to make the models. Why GW is not jumping on that bandwagon doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because all they're doing is allowing these third-party vendors who are producing entire models to do it and then replace them on what they could be doing themselves.
Do you think, so just to play devil's advocate, do you think it could be they're concerned about like the quality of models that are set on the table? Because I mean, like, your stuff is some of the more high quality 3D bits I've ever received. But I've bought 3D bits before, and they don't look like this. They usually are like either the lined things, you have to acetone them and sand them, or do you think that might be a concern for them?
I think there's a level of concern to that, but I also think that they just refuse to change with what's coming, kind of thing. This is going to happen regardless of whether they like it or not. People are going to continue to do it because there are people that don't care, and they're happy to print an entire army and feel that army 100% as a 3D printed army, and that's going to happen. And so, how do you fight that? and at the same time, do you profit off of it to some extent? Even if they just released their bits that way, I think that it goes back to the kind of the old Napster thing, right? Like everybody was all worried that all the music in the entire industry was going to be eliminated, and then all they did is they adapted, and now we have Spotify and these other things that feed you music through streaming. And so yeah, the CD died, but they found a new way of doing it, and it still continued to be a profitable business for the music industry. So I think that they need to make some real hard choices coming up, because if you look at yes, I agree with you. There are really bad printers out there, and there are people that are doing a bad job. But it's getting easier and easier every couple months as you see this technology develop more to get more higher quality models with very little effort and skill. That's what I'm noticing. There are obviously going to be those people who put way too much time into it, like me, that are gonna get better at printing. Like I can't even describe to you. I have literal buckets of resin prototypes. Like I won't send you when I print that for you. I won't even send somebody a prototype version of it. I will print it 10 times and make sure it's perfect before I'll send it out. Not everybody's going to do that. There's a lot of cost involved in that, and so there's going to be bad printers out there, but there's eventually going to be good printers as well.
Yeah, that's funny. I was just looking at this box because I still got the box from when you sent it. I've even got the little prototypes of the same thing, and I got the build-ups, and so yeah, I got a lot. And then there's these prototypes too.
Yeah. Well, and I just did the stuff for Nurgle Matt, and I told him, I was like, hey, look, these are failures, and here's they are. You can use them. I'm not gonna. They're gonna sit in a bucket in my freaking shelf forever. So take them. Hopefully you can use them as additional things, etc. So I will usually send all the extra pieces, because you never know what you're going to use it for. You could put that backpack on some little core berserker dude who's going to look like a total hard ass. He's giant running around with this this guy. So
turn him into
cool
jump packs.
Right, exactly. Other things. So I like to do that, and that's just it's cost. I've already built in prototyping costs into my work when I'm doing custom jobs and stuff. So I have no problem giving those additional pieces and saying, hey, look, I know these are messed up, but take them. So, but again, I think that eventually GW's got to make a decision on how they're going to either compete or eliminate. So they're either going to have to tell every single tournament that they sponsor, you can't have any 3D models, period, and that will force the market to say, okay, well, I can't play at these tournaments, so do you want to play there, or do you want to, play by GW's rules or whatever? Or they can make the decision to change over and say, okay, well, we'll support it partially ourselves and make money ourselves off of it, and then at least we can profit off the pieces that make sense.
I really like the idea of going back to the old bits guide, but with the STL files. I really like that idea.
How do you think that would even get enforced? Like, I couldn't tell any difference between something you would send to me at a high quality level and something I'd buy from GW anyway.
Well, you guys have seen my armies. There's 3D printer bits and pieces throughout that entire thing. Can you tell? Once it's all painted, once it's all done and everything, you have no idea. And I've seen guys who, have huge pieces that are 3D printed, and I had no idea. As a 3D printing person, I'm like, that's 3D printed? What'd you print it with? And then we talk about it or whatever. I'm like, okay, now that I'm getting a really close look, I see the details. But nobody's going to see that from across the table. Like when you pick up somebody else's model and go super detailed into it, very rarely.
A question just came in about water washable resin. I don't know anything about that. Do you, Dan?
So all resin is water washable to a point. So what I use is a ultrasonic cleaner. I mean, if you're talking about, I think what you're talking about though in that is actually FDM. So the supports are a giant pain in the butt for FDM to remove sometimes. And there's actually a water washable support you can actually print. So if you get a dual head extruder on your printer, you can print one that prints the supports, and then the second extruder prints the actual plastic. And then once you're done, you just take that, dunk it in the water, and it dissolves all the supports. Really cool, super expensive.
That sounds really cool, because those supports are like all over the place in some of those builds.
So there is some resins out there that you can just wash off, but typically like you can wash them off anyway. I don't use alcohol to remove resin. I use Simple Green. It's actually just like you would remove your paint from your models. I throw in an ultrasonic cleaner full of Simple Green, and then bam, and then just rinse it off with some water afterwards, and they're perfectly clean.
Cool.
All right. Well, that is our hour for the day. That's really fascinating stuff. I'm really glad to talk to you. I know today's hobby time was quite technical, but these are both topics that I think are changing the face of what the hobby looks like right now. It's no longer, simply just hand building every little bit that you need, and also it's no longer having to go through the task of hand painting everything. These things are changing. Like I see airbrush painters winning all kinds of paint tournaments now, or painting judgings now, where I didn't used to. So these are really interesting, and I'm glad to chat with you guys. Quick shout out. It looks like Frostbite in our chat. His daughter had a birthday today. She's 19.
Yeah, happy birthday.
So happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
And that's Karina. So, and then it looks like we have a few of the other teammates in the chat. Thanks to Matt, who helped me, Orc Matt, who helped me put together the script today. I know he wants to be here, and we'll keep rotating people through. Do you guys have any other final comments or anything else?
Yeah, if you guys wanted to do, we'll go around final shout outs. I know that, Eric, you've got your 3D printing company. If you're looking for more work, feel free to shout it out, or if
I don't have
you're good.
Company.
No, he has a commission, paint commission.
Or not, no, sorry, it's not 3D Store. That's my bad. Dan, your 3D printing company, we touched on it a little bit with archon3dsmiths.com, but if you wanted to do one last, how people can get in touch with you, same thing with Eric. If you're looking for more painting stuff, feel free, shout it out. I'll throw it up on YouTube with some links. And
Yeah, cool. So archon3dsmiths.com or archon3dsmiths@gmail.com if you want to email me. But I do all kinds of mostly commission work where I build custom models for people or custom bits and those types of things. Anything you're having a hard time finding and whatnot, you can find on there. I also do a lot of terrain and do good deals for all 3D printed sets that do entire tables and things like that. I just put up 40 or 50 more terrain pieces just recently on the site. And so I print it all, ship it all, to all over the world, and happy to do so.
Cool.
I know you show up at a lot of tournaments too to do some sales and stuff like that, and you've supplied. Do you have any plans? I know beyond a lot of these tournaments being closed down, do you have any plans of being in any of the tournaments?
Yeah, so I'll still be at Buckeye, and then Michigan GT. Jeff contacted me, and I'm doing all the trophies for the entire event. So we're making a deal with that. So I should have a small booth there this year. And then I like to go and play as well as run the little shop or whatever. So I'll be at Buckeye first, and then I should have 3 or 4 other ones within the next 12 months too that I always bring my stuff to and show people, and
And Brandon and I helped run the doubles tournament at Michigan GT this last year, and he made the trophies for that, and those trophies were sick.
Yeah,
they were.
Cool.
I don't have one
floating
with
around
me
here somewhere.
Yeah,
mine's downstairs in my trophy case.
Chainsaw going into the
won
ground
it, so I have it.
Into 2. Oh, right.
Yeah. And then
I won it, so I have it.
If I could find it. It's not in my
So-
trophy area.
Eric, how about you? How do we get a hold of you for commission?
Honestly, I don't have any kind of website or anything like that. I'm pretty generic. You can hit me up on Facebook. That's kind of my easiest way to get a hold of me, and we can discuss there on what you're looking for, what kind of quality you're looking for, and how long it would take me to process something like that.
Okay. Now, so we have the Team Bad Decisions Facebook if we can't find you. If you can't find him there, go ahead and hit that up, and we'll make sure you get in contact with Eric.
I'll definitely be able to see it on there too. So.
Yeah, I have the trophy real quick if you...
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. It died.
Never mind. I'll,
ZBrush crash. So, oh well.
Well.
We'll show it next time.
and then
All right.
Nick and I were we're all part of Team Bad Decisions, but if you're can't get to our videos at any time, we're going to try and stay live around 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Saturday, and our videos will be edited and go up on YouTube. So if you can catch us live, we'd love to chat with you and throw us a follow. If you can't catch us live, the VOD will be up right after this for everybody. There's no paywall or anything. And also, feel free to throw a follow up if you like our stuff. And then if you like us on YouTube, it's the Team Bad Decisions on YouTube as well. We'll part these videos out so that you can get little bite-sized chunks and throw us a subscribe or hit like or throw some comments on stuff you'd like to see in the future. Throw ideas out there. But thanks for watching, guys. We couldn't do this without
Thanks
you.
a lot. Good seeing you
Yeah.
guys.
Enjoy your weekend.
Everybody.
Peace.